agenda.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda is a presentation from the SAD 40, Steve Nolan. Would you like me to step right up? Sure.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Nolan. I'm the superintendent of schools. I'm a Waldoboro resident, and we're here tonight to share information with you about our renovation project. Joining me this evening from our board of directors at the other end of the room, starting with Melvin Williams, Emily Trask Eaton, Danny Jackson, Jeanette Wheeler, Matthew Spino. That's all of our board members. I'm sorry, Randy Casa. Thank you. I now think I have all of our board members
Sandy. Andy says.
behind me. Sandy O'Farrell. Also, our athletic director, Matt Lash. Julia Levenseller is the principal from Miller School, as well as Linda Pease, Madomic Valley High School principal. Karen Pike, our business manager. And behind me, Brian Race, our director of facilities. I'd like to start tonight by asking Brian to share with you our project, some information about our project, and then we will work to answer your questions. Brian?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for having us here tonight. I can bring up the slides, please. And to the next one. This is the agenda that we'll be following. And slide, please. So how we got here? Probably the biggest question of all. 3.5 years ago, when I started at RSU 40, Superintendent Nolan came to me and said that he wanted me to build out, take a look at the district, and we needed to identify shortcomings in the district and to build out a 10-year plan where we could start budgeting for repairs and to make sure that we have planned in our budget for replacement as required of our equipment and buildings, parts of the buildings. In that effort, it started right out. Siemens Corporation, who we've had a longstanding relationship with, had been doing an assessment of the district, primarily focusing on the mechanical services of our buildings, as well as the structural piece of our buildings. In addition to that, I went around and I spoke to our administration staff to get their input. We had vendors, local vendors. We had Daryl Townsend from Rock Coast Plumbing, Ed Alley from Alley Electric, and Dwayne Vigue from All Aspects Builders, and then a number of other ones as well. I have spent a lot of time personally in all of our buildings and with our Siemens technicians, in with our plumbers, with our electricians, looking up in the roofs and the ceilings and looking all around myself. And then most recently, we brought in Energy Efficiency Investments, which is a company, an energy savings company that specializes in rehabs of schools. And they started out in Vermont. That's where they do the majority of their work. And they've just come into Maine, but they do have a long history of helping out schools, doing assessments and figuring out the best way ahead to achieve a given district's goals. Finally, next was Harriman Associates. They are an architecture and engineering firm. You will see them. They are deeply involved in most new school builds here in the state of Maine. And they have a woman, Lisa Sowen, who is the chief of their K-12 program, came down, has spent a great deal of time in the district, and she provided some invaluable insight. And the final piece of that was Scott Brown, who is the engineer and architect for the Department of Education. And about a year and a half ago, I approached him as far as where RSU 40 stood on the school list for capital construction, which is state funded, where they help defray the cost of building a new school with an eye towards Madomic Valley High School, but also Miller School. And I'll talk about this a little bit later on, but we are down the list, and there is no probably 20 plus years before we're going to see a replacement for Madomic Valley High School. And again, I will get into that a little bit more further into the presentation. Slide, please. As far as projects at Madomic Valley High School, I'm going to start with some of the things that are breaking down that we need to have fixed. Then we'll get into a rehab of the building and then an addition to the building. As many of you may know, we had a septic system that we are looking at having replaced. The septic system is the original system from when the school was built in 1967. There are 2 septic fields related to that service that system. One of them failed in 2000. We capped that field off and all the effluent was going into the second field. We had a breakout in that secondary field. We had that cleaned up. We had people come in, opened up the original field that is taking effluent, but it's certainly something that needs immediate attention or near-term attention. Also at the high school is our water treatment system. As many of you may be reading, there are lead testing in water. There is a lot of that is becoming very high on the priority list in the state of Maine. And our water treatment system at the high school is certainly getting outdated. We are servicing that regularly, and it is something that we need to replace. In the gymnasium, bleachers and hoop repairs, the greenhouse, and finally the auditorium, seating and carpeting. Slide, please. As far as the school renovation, we are looking at a $30 million renovation. That includes, in the list here, the asbestos abatement. Primarily, that is our VCT tile we have asbestos tile through probably about 60+% of the high school. Electrical upgrades, reconfiguring the industrial arts wing to make that better heating system, better ventilation system. So it's meeting ASHRAE standards and that it is more usable for the students. As part of this project, we would have a state requirement to install a fire suppression system. We'd be looking at a new boiler, and you'll see that as a continuous point throughout my presentation. The old cast iron boilers that were a favorite used to be that when they failed, you'd simply remove one of the pieces of it and one of the sections, slide in a new section, put it back together, and you went up and running. And that is just simply not available anymore. And if one of our boilers go down, we were looking at a multiple month outage in the school before we'd be able to reoccupy that. And the boiler at the high school is about 38 years old. So that is certainly getting towards the end of its life expectancy. Exterior upgrades to the building. It's outdated. It's also a lot of the trim is starting to wear to the point where we are going to have damage created from water leaks as well as parts of the roof. Replacing the pneumatic controls and valves, that is on our heating systems. A lot of in the high school, we have a classroom where it may be 65 degrees in one classroom, and the next classroom right over, it is 78 degrees. And it's just the controls are outdated, they're wearing out, the valves are failing, and they need attention. And an upgrade to the existing classrooms and specialty rooms, specifically electrical upgrades. Most of those rooms that were built in when it was built in the 60s simply didn't have the electrical requirements that today's classrooms have. for projectors and other things. Roof repairs, adding a generator to the school, and safety and security upgrades. Slide, please. For the school addition, we are looking at a 15,000 square foot addition that will connect the two wings. Some of you who are long-term residents remember when there was a glass corridor that connected those wings. We will build those out as new science classrooms. Our current science classrooms are considerably outdated. And then we can, once that is done, we'll take our existing science classrooms and reconfigure those into standard classrooms. And so that is going to allow us to meet some of the requirements for the state that they have there are a lot more classes required now, specialty classes that we have. And that gives us the space that we need for that. It also will bring us up to standard for accreditation purposes. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more later on, some of the problems that we have with accreditation at Madomic Valley High School. Slide, please. So why a renovation and addition? I spoke a little bit earlier about my conversation with Scott Brown from the Department of Education. Based on the 2017-18 priority list, we are number 53 on the list. We have 9 high schools that are above us on that list. At this point, I believe on that list, they have accomplished about 17 schools or so off that 17-18 list. So we are still considerably down the list. We are anticipating a new application cycle in 2024 with an expected release date of 2026. From the conversations with Scott, I do not anticipate that we will climb significantly up that list. We will probably hold our position, move up slightly, but still be behind many schools. And they are looking right now at potentially doing 1 to maybe 2 schools per year at the most. So we are certainly looking at 20 years plus before we'll be having an opportunity to have Madomic Valley High School replaced. And then that comment. So in the last 20 years, we've done 8 high schools. And again, that's just reaffirming the fact that we are looking for a long way out. And when we've got 9 schools in front of us, 9 high schools, we've got 8 that have been done in the last 20 years. So we are a long way out. And then finally, the cost of a new build. Right now, we are certainly looking at well over $100 million for a new build of a high school, potentially even more than that. And so the bones of Madomic Valley High School, I think, are solid. And I think that a renovation with an addition is the best course of action that we can look at doing. Slide, please. On the high school and middle school campus, specifically talking about athletics, we are looking, and also the campus, we are looking at resurfacing the parking lot between the high school and middle school and the roadway. Those of you who've been there, that parking lot is crumbling, falling apart, and that is leading to icy conditions, and it's a safety hazard for sure. And we're looking to resurface the current track around the football field. As it stands now, we have a culvert for drainage from the center area of the football field that goes out. That culvert is lifting, and we have 1 lane out of the track right now that is unusable, and we're closing in on having 2 of the lanes on the track that are going to be unusable. And for the excavation and the track repairs, as you can see, we are looking at a little over $100,000 for that. And the final piece of that will be the athletic field improvement. We are looking at putting sports turf on the football and soccer field, adding additional seating, and adding lights for nighttime games. In the last couple of years, we have missed the opportunity to host numerous postseason sporting events on that field because of the wetness. And we also spend a great deal of money maintaining that field. And it's certainly something that is happening in a lot of the school districts around the state with success. Slide, please. Looking at Madomic Middle School, obviously that's our newest school. And with that said, we definitely have some issues that we need to look at there. You've seen the bleachers and the hoop repairs. That is not an uncommon in gymnasiums. Those costs escalate very rapidly. We do have some classroom repairs, cabinets that have been broken off the hinges, holes in walls, and other things such as that. Refurbishing the cooling tower. The cooling tower that was installed during the original build was built by a company in Canada that is no longer in business. Finding repair parts for it is difficult at best. And so we are cobbling it together, but it is on limited time. A generator, as we've talked about with Madomic Valley High School, exterior painting, the water system. The water system, when it was originally installed, is controlled the entire system from the well pump all the way up through to circulation through the water, and control of the fire suppression system is controlled by it's a programmable controller. That controller failed 2 years ago. We were down for several weeks before we found somebody who was able to get that system back up and running. And we need to get a better system in place. He's got it working, but it is not something that is going to give us good for the long run. And again, safety and security upgrades for the school. Moving on to Miller School. We are looking to replace and expand the parking lot. Again, Miller School is much like some of our other schools. The parking lots are crumbling, particularly down the side by the gymnasium. This past winter, we had significant portions of that collapsed that we've now had filled with gravel as a temporary fix. We also have significant parking problems at Miller School. And so we are hoping to improve that parking lot and also add additional parking for the staff. And refurbishment of the playground and ball field. Slide, please. As far as the school renovation, it's about a 43,000 square foot building, about approximately $140 per square foot. We have asbestos abatement, not nearly as much as we have at the high school, but a not insignificant amount of asbestos in the school. We are looking to add security upgrades, replace the fire alarm, and we'll be adding a fire suppression system. Exterior upgrades, painting, replacing trim boards that are bad. The cupola, if anybody's noticed the cupola up on top of the school, it's degrading badly. Again, pneumatic controls are a problem at Miller School. Much like the high school, we have classrooms with the temperatures vary by as much as 8 to 10 degrees from one classroom to the next because of the controls that are outdated and valves that are leaking. We are looking to upgrade and reconfigure some of our classes and specialty rooms, much like the high school, make them better suited for the students that'll be in there. And the safety and security. Next slide, please. As far as the addition, we are looking at about a 12,000 square foot addition to Miller School. Adding classrooms, administrative offices, conference rooms, and then additional classrooms for our gifted and talented teachers' workroom and the music room. Again, this comes back to a lot of new state and federal mandated classes that are required in schools today, that when the school was built, they just simply didn't need that. And we need more classrooms to allow for that to happen. If anybody had saw the newspaper report that was released a few weeks ago, there was a picture of one of the teachers' classrooms, and it was in the hallway going down towards the primary wing. It's a desk right at an intersection, and that's where that's the only spot that they can dig out to hold their one-on-ones with students. Slide, please. So why Miller? Much like the high school, currently by state standards, Miller School is about 15,000 square feet undersized for the student population and the state standards for square footage per student. And again, this is not on the 2017-18 main capital construction list. So we are looking at 20+ years at a minimum before a replacement will be available, would be coming in the works for Miller. Excuse me, for Miller, yes. Slide, please. Warren Community School. We are looking to do a boiler conversion to propane, exterior painting, upgrades to playground, pneumatic controls, parking lot replacement, and safety and security upgrades. Slide, please. Friendship Village School. Friendship is another school that is undersized, more because of the class requires that are required to be taught these days compared to what were required when the school was built. We are also looking for some upgrades on the parking lots, exterior, ventilation upgrades across the board. Slide, please. Prescott Memorial School. Very similar things that we were asking for other places. Ventilation, pneumatic controls, playground, safety and security. Slide, please. Union Elementary School in the central office. The roof repairs is one of the key points on this one. That roof received a failing grade on all portions of the roof during a recent assessment by a roofing specialist. Windows, we have windows in that school. The vast majority of the windows at Union Elementary School do not work. They do not rise. You can't open them. We have a domestic hot water heater that it's on its last legs. We have HVAC repairs, pneumatic controls, fire alarm system, and playgrounds and safety security. Slide, please. On a district-wide cost as part of this. Currently, we rent the bus garage. We are looking to either build or buy a bus garage. The other three portions of that are related to the entire bond of $81 million between the additions at Miller and Madomic Valley High School, with two contingencies: the construction contingency to allow for any unforeseen circumstances at 5%, and then also a 5% bid contingency that if it simply it comes in higher than what we had anticipated. Continuing on. So this is the breakdown of the district. As you can see, the lion's share of this is happening to schools in Waldoboro. And it is certainly all work that will prove beneficial for our schools to keep them at the level that we are hoping to keep them at. Slide, please. Continuing on with the cost analysis, right now we are anticipating about a $500,000 a year savings in our between electricity, heating, and our maintenance costs out of that, which will primarily come out of my budget specifically. We continue to evaluate the funding options, the federal and state grants, as well as the state revolving renovation loans. And I say that specifically that last couple, this $81 million bond, and we'll get into this a little bit more, is what we're asking to is approve us to spend up to $81 million. That does not mean we will not be taking the full $81 million bond out immediately. We'll do that incrementally. And if we are getting some grants, then there is potential that we will not be taking the full $81 million out. And I'll be talking about that here on the next slide. Slide, please. So taxpayer impacts. I know that you all want to know a hard line on what we're looking at for a cost. And the simple answer is that I can't give you one. There are too many variables to give you a hard number. As I said, we are still evaluating grant opportunities. In addition to that, if approved by the voters in November, we will not be taking the full $81 million out all in one shot. This will be probably a 4 to 6 year project, and we will be taking out money as is needed for each year. And that amount of money is what we will be paying the loans on, and that what will be accruing taxes. And the interest rates are established at the time that the loan is taken out. So again, in our bond, the main bond bank, normally what they do is they compile multiple loans throughout the state school Department of Education, and they go out and they continue to look at the best options for interest rates. And they are very successful in managing that, at keeping them at the lowest rate possible. Looking at some upcoming debt loss that we have for the district, that will certainly be happening during the duration of this bond. We have the Madomic Middle School coming off. And then we have 3 different projects that we had been doing with Siemens over the years that will be dropping off again incrementally throughout the duration of this bond. So a rough estimate, it's about $400 per 100,000 in 2030, based on the current tax valuations. That's if it's at a full $81 million at a 25-year rate. And again, that's our best estimate that we can give at this time, if the full $81 million is taken in loans and utilized. Slide, please. We have been working on the schools. During the COVID, we received a significant amount of federal monies, and we did not, we used that wisely, and we put that back into our facilities and trying to improve those as much as possible. We focused on ventilation, lighting, security, parking lots. And creating a facilities building for district-wide to be able to house some new equipment to allow us to assist in snow removal and just keep the district in a little bit better shape and a safer place to move about in. Slide, please. So the way ahead, we're going to have similar meetings like this to the other 4 towns that make up RSU 40. I'm going to be having tours of schools where you can come in and you can visit the schools. I would ask you all to come in and take a look for yourself so that you can see exactly what we're talking about. There will be a public meeting in advance of the referendum in November, much like on our normal budget cycle. And then finally, the referendum in November. Next slide. So final thoughts. Unfortunately, we are not alone in this. There are many towns and districts throughout the state that are facing very similar problems with schools and looking at budgets, bonds. In fact, Boothbay Harbor in this November will be also having an $89 million bond going before their voters. So we are certainly not alone in this problem. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I certainly will take any questions that anybody has.
Anybody on the select board with questions?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned that the space requirements, and those are big numbers in the presentation at 2 of the schools. They're driven by attendance by the number of students in the school.
That's correct.
Are there any projections of what the attendance is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years? Particularly since lots of homeschooling going on. I noticed Coastal Christian School is putting an addition on. I'm just wondering whether this space is going to be constructed and then vacant.
I don't have that answer. I do know that a few years ago, we had an assessment done by an organization out of Massachusetts, and as part of that assessment of the schools, they did a study of population growth and I'm thinking back, I'm not, you please don't quote me exactly, but in that presentation, they felt that it was going to continue to at least maintain at this level of the current populations of the towns.
Well, there are a lot of drivers here too. Midcoast, Maine, I'm a refugee from Massachusetts and the town is aging. I mean, there's not a lot of children in school and a lot of young people are being priced out of the market because of, because of mortgage prices, if nothing else. But also this is going to affect their monthly payment in terms of property taxes as well. So principal, interest, and taxes is going to lock a lot of young families out of this school district. So I really would like to get an answer on a projection of the number of students that are going to be going to the school compared to where they are now.
And I don't have I'm the principal at North School. I don't have a projection, 10 years down the road, but I can tell you that in the last few years, we have had more and more students come in, move into Waldeboro. Last year from November, beginning of November until the end of December, we had 12 new students move into Waldeboro. Our enrollment is up over the last couple of years, and I don't see that changing. We have our pre-K, we have 2 full-time pre-Ks now. 32 students is the cap because of the guidelines. We are full and we have a waiting list.
Well, I suppose that's good for town's growth.
Sure.
I can also speak to, I looked at the last 10 years and I have not seen a decline across RSU 40. Anything greater than about 50 students across all 7 schools.
Still, it would be nice to get that number from somebody.
I've shared some information that like you're asking about as part of my budget presentation. I'd be happy to share that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, real quick. Thank you for coming in here and the board members. It's good to see you folks here. Because we've asked for the input from the school board, especially when we do our annual budget. We'd love to have you guys come back again. We start talking about next year's budget, because I'm sure it's gonna be less, right? Especially after this. Nothing personal, just business, but as far as the board goes, school board, what was the general consensus? Was it everyone vote go for it, or was there some yeses and nos?
So I've been on the facilities committee for 5-6 years. I've been in shape. And everybody knows me, I'm Sandy O'Farrell. Everybody knows I do not want to raise my taxes. I don't want to pay what I'm paying now. So that's no hidden secret. But the thing is because of the economy, because of COVID, we have basically put Band-Aids on it. So we run out of Band-Aids. We have Waldeboro wants to bring people into town. We have to offer them a school that's decent. So on that note, what I don't think people realize is this building goes into another aspect of the education project, is the accreditation. And I don't think you realize accreditation. I'm gonna have Linda Pease explain that to you. That makes a big factor in our building.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm the principal of Bedonia Valley High School. And this is a little sensitive because I remember when this school was built, I was 5. So if the school's 55 and I was 5, you now know how old I am. So talk about this aging facility, it makes me feel like I want to just be wheeled out the door. But so I remember when it was brand new, and boy, it's really different times now because, as was mentioned, just the electrical demand alone in our classrooms. There are 2 outlets in classrooms, and we need strips and this is a lot newer than Bedonia Valley High School, but even you have a lot of wires around here, so you can just imagine what it's like in classroom to try to support that for kids. Anyway, I bumped around the district for 20 years and then ended up at Madomic Valley High School in 2005, and they were going through their 10-year cycle of review from an organization called NEASC, which stands for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and they are an accrediting body for secondary schools all over the country and even the world. And basically, they give you like a report card. You could think of it like that, to say, yes, when kids graduate from this school, they have come from an accredited, a school that has received a positive rating. And so in that 2005-2006 review, we were cited for a number of different things. But at that particular time, the number of trailers we had outside the school, that was not, they didn't feel that was the best use for kids to have these classes and trailers that were outside. And there were a number of things. And so we worked for that 10 years, getting the trailers away, trying to beef up our classrooms. We worked on our curriculum. So you basically, over a 10-year span of time, you get a bunch of recommendations that you have to try to resolve. So we resolved those to the best that we could. And then we had the next 10-year review in 2015, and they were said, yeah, well, you did a good job there. Oh, I should back up and say we were put on warning in 2005. And so we tried to resolve all of our issues, and we were hoping that when we did the 2015 that we would get off from warning, but we're still on warning. And the facility is a big part of that. So I've been in communication with the NEASC folks. And one of the questions that I asked them was, would we potentially lose our accreditation? Like, when do you say to us, you've been on warning long enough and you haven't fixed this? And I received word this summer, just a few weeks ago, that they wrote back and said, look, as long as we can see that your school community is trying to resolve issues, that they're paying attention to what's going on, like even just this proposal and this meeting here tonight would be something that I would put down as action that we have taken to try to address some of our issues. As long as we are working on those issues, they would continue to rate our school positively and move us forward. If we were to just stop and say, no, we're not going to do that, then they would pull our accreditation. And what does that really mean? Well, most schools are accredited by either NEASC or another accrediting body. The other accrediting body is not one that many schools use. And so really it's NEASC that we have to look at us and say, yes. And how that's used is kids going on to college then can say that I graduated from an accredited school and that it's written in your school profile. So I was asked to just give you a background on what that meant, and I hope I did. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
So just to spin off on, and am I wrong that if you're not an accredited high school, that say your child went from Madomic to Lincoln Academy, Lincoln Academy does not have to take those credits if you're not accredited?
I think that there are, I think it's a little bit different than it used to be. It's not quite as strict, but it could happen that way, that if you move around, your credits wouldn't be accepted in various places. It's potential.
So I also looked into the latest guidelines, and if you're not accredited high school, you don't qualify for federal grants as college.
Some of those things go away, yes.
You lose all that data. And, you know, and that's a big important part, I think, because if we can't offer these kids, we owe these kids the education, but we owe it to them.
But
John. Finish up.
I appreciate that, but can I get an answer to my question?
I can answer.
It was you got 18 members on your board, right? How
I
many you got, Danny?
Yeah, 16. The vote was taken May 4th. Of the 16 members who were absent, so at least 14. The vote, there were 3 people that voted no. The 14 present, there were 3 people that voted no. I can't speak. One of them, I think, voted no because she had originally wanted the vote to happen this past year. So, but of the vote, the weighted votes, 679 to 197. So 2 members were absent and 3 members voted.
Linda, I can appreciate, I can remember it was new, not quite as old as you are, but I can remember playing there as a kid, But, and I'm not arguing with the point that these schools need some work. But sometimes we look at this list and like, what can we pick and choose? What do we really have to, do we have to put, God bless your father, do we really have to put new seats in the auditorium? Do we have to put new carpeting in the auditorium? You know, stuff like that. That's what, it's a big ask. It's a big ask, and
I mean, you look at the 300, you look at with those numbers and I mean, I don't know what your interest rate's going to be. And, you know, we have a budget process here and, you know, when interest rates were low, we redid our bonds to get it low. And now you're asking for an $81 million bond at some of the highest interest rates I've seen in my 35-year career. You know, on a $300,000 house, that's $1,200 increase a year, and people are going to hurt, and our families hurt. And you know, I've spent the last month sitting in the community navigation desk, and there are people who can't pay their electric bill. There are literally families in this town that have both parents working, seniors, who for the first time in their lives have to walk through that door and ask for help. So, you know, you guys aren't going to be the ones who are sitting at the front desk when people come in to pay their taxes. So I have to understand this really well because I'm going to be the frontline person. Unless a board member would like to come and volunteer to sit with us, that'd be great. But what is the criteria for the Department of Education for funding the construction? Do we know what that is? Like, what's their, like, if you're saying you could possibly move up the list, what's the actual criteria that they're looking at? Do we know?
You make an application to the state. They have a board that comes and does an assessment of the school. And out of that inspection of the school, they then go back along with your application. And there is a board that sits together and they create a priority list.
So that priority could change
They'll be
based,
done what, once every 5 years, Brian, once every 7, or they don't?
but that
do
one was
7?
coming up, right? That
Well, we believe that we are expecting one in 2024.
In 2024.
Next year that will be released in 2026.
and are things like the accreditation that was just talked about taken into account, or is it just facilities?
It's everything.
I don't know that off the top. of my head.
Okay. And because I'm a numbers person, I like numbers. Is the contingency that you guys built in enough? Because we're looking at more than 5% contingency on stuff we're bidding out.
That is going at the recommendation of both Harriman Associates as well as Energy Efficiency Investments.
And the 25 years, why not? So a lot of times buildings go out 40.
We cannot. The attorney said we cannot go out greater than 25. But we don't have to borrow all 80 at the same time, so we can
Right.
borrow it incrementally over the life of the project, and they will invest our bond and could change the interest rates going down.
So how are you loading the bonds? Are you front loading them or paying, like, how are you gonna pay interest up front? Are you gonna, how are you gonna structure the actual bond, or you guys
We
haven't?
don't know
you
yet,
don't know
depends
yet.
on what rate we take the money out. We have to pay an annual payment on the principal, and we pay semi-annual on the interest. The interest is fixed for the period of time until the main bond bank decides to reinvest if they see the interest rates going down.
Which you brought up another interesting thing, when we were looking at refinancing our debt here. Maine Bond Bank doesn't always give you the best deal. You might want to talk to your bond attorney, because sometimes going out on your own compared to the bond bank might be good. So it's worth a conversation. Believe me, I didn't believe that at first when we started looking. And if you'll recall, I think Bob and Abden were here. Remember, we had our bond attorney recommended somebody that we talked to get our own rating. So you would have the benefit then of having all 5, I think it's 5 participants in RSU 40, right? 5 towns. You would have the benefit of our rating. and you might get a better rate. So it's just something you should be
Yeah,
aware
I've
of.
been in conversations with the attorneys as to which way we would go.
Good.
Whether we'd use the main bond bank or go out on our own.
Yeah.
But I did want to speak to a few things that John was asking about, is picking and choosing. And I'm not a facility expert, I'm a business manager, but I do happen to sit in one of the schools, and I can tell you, Union Elementary School, we're on the second floor, water gushes into the roof.
Okay, so that's priority.
We have giant buckets,
I would agree.
trash bags, and we have windows that don't close, windows that don't open. Just in the top floor of the Union Elementary School, never mind Julia's school, and Julia can speak to it better than I. We have teacher in what used to be a bathroom holding class. We have teacher sitting in the hallway holding class. We have facilities issues everywhere in all 7 buildings. And in our current budget, we have approximately $200,000 here dedicated to maintenance of buildings. And just to put that in perspective, boiler system costs $600,000. Miller School ran on 1 boiler for the first 30-40 years of that school, which meant if it went down, we didn't have a redundant boiler, we would have had to shut the school down for the period of time to replace the boiler. When we got COVID money, that was one of the first things we did, was put in the redundant boiler, Miller School, and it cost us around $650. We converted over to propane as well at the same time. So just to put it in perspective of how many asks we have and where we're at, we're not looking for anything exciting and sexy in this bond. We're looking to get our schools to average at this point, to get us to where it's safe. Pleasant place for the children. to go to
You're
school.
gonna have a hard time selling to the citizens when they see the list. Auditorium seats, stadium seats for the football field. That's a hard sell. People will buy a new boiler, a new roof, things like that.
The auditorium seating, and I can't speak to this as well as maybe Linda, but they're unsafe and they can't be repaired at this point. That's the thing.
I just think that if I were doing this, and I'm not saying, but we have some experience with trying to get things passed here in the last couple of years. A priority list, I mean, I understand listing it by schools, but an actual list of where those priorities lie in your minds, in the board's mind, I think would be good to have when you start presenting the next time, because, you know, everybody's going to look at it and say, well, where does this fall in a priority? And not knowing what your priorities are and just seeing them by schools. Like, I think everybody would say, if their HVAC doesn't work and the security is a problem, I think people can buy into that. But when you're getting into some of these other things, I think if you prioritize that, it might be more easily understood. But that's just a suggestion. I don't know. And I just think you have to be really mindful when you put up a 400 on every $100,000. You know, the average house now in Waldoboro is around $300,000, and that's $1,200. And well,
What's the average income?
well, and the average income is, and therein, and what I'm saying is, we don't, you know, we just went through a reval. That wasn't something that everybody, you know, nobody sitting on this board here, I believe, wanted to do a reval. But the reality is the economy is where it is right now. And that's, I think that's what you guys need to hear. And I know you know it. And like Sandy said, you know, she doesn't like to pay any more taxes, but there are literally people now who just literally cannot pay their bills. And that $1,200 a year is a make or break thing for them. So I just wanted you to be aware of it.
You mentioned a bond fund. When this first came to our attention, I had envisioned of a bond issue of $81 million and a construction project that starts right away. Obviously, this isn't going to happen. How is the cash flow? How does this work? I mean, we buy the bond in 2023 or 2024, and there's $81 million and it hasn't been spent yet. Do we reinvest that Or is this some sort of revolving fund?
It would be more than one bond. So the vote is on the whole bond amount, but there would be multiple bonds based on the time that we want to withdraw them. The bonds are only done in November and May of each year.
So there'll be multiple bonds, and this is just an estimate of the cost of construction? The $81 million is just an estimate at this point?
Well, the $81 million bond, that I think that we're getting a little confused here. I think there's $81 million is an up to number, but not to exceed number in the bond. Each year we will take out, based on what we have planned for that year, we will take out that much money of the loan. And we will then pay.
We'll pay the agreed interest rate.
That is correct. So for instance, if this was approved in November, we receive our first allotment in May. For this upcoming summer, we would probably only be looking at maybe a couple of 3 or 4 projects, $2 to $3 million. That's what we'd have for the first year in the principal. By the following year, it would be a little bit more. And as we ramp up towards doing the high school and or Miller, that was when we would be taking a large amount of the $81 million. There'd be a larger chunk taken out during those projects.
What year does that hit?
Well, right now, I'm estimating that we'd be looking at probably 3 years out for one and 4 years out for other by the time that we go through all of the architectural designs, getting those approved and everything.
So
In the interim, we'd be taking care of some of the ventilation issues. We'd be taking care of the boilers. We'd be doing that the first couple of years. Then we'd probably be looking at, again, the major construction going on year 3, year 4. So 28, 29, something like that.
Okay.
Which is where we put the lion's share of the loan would be kicking in 30.
Who is gonna write up that for the voters to vote on?
I'm working with the attorney on the right way for the ballot to be. So
That was already due.
it's due at the end of the month.
30th.
Oh, like next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the main reason I set up,
Yeah.
was to say that the $400 that we're talking about, again, is an estimate, but that's based when we're at that $81 million.
Right.
Next year, not saying moving it out makes it better, but just that it's not, that's when we're at the full 81, and then it starts going down, because the principal starts going down, so
It's just it's a,
that would be at the highest level.
yeah, the only other thing I have, and this is just because we struggle with this on the select board struggles with this, is why when we do it, is it that you need the money right away is why you're not going for the June, when everybody typically votes on the school budget, and typically more people will come out in the June versus in a off year when there's just state questions?
Primarily, it's so that we can start doing projects next summer. If we wait until June, we wouldn't be able to start projects, we'd be pushed back another year.
Could you look at it a little differently and potentially ask for a smaller amount in November, and then when there's more public turnout, voter turnout, ask in June for the bigger amount? That way you get more participation from the voters.
So where we stand right now is our board has voted to have the full amount go to voters in November.
Bob?
You know, the quality of the schools, the structure is part of the formula that attracts good teachers. People like to teach in a facility that offers the most up-to-date facilities. And a lot of your cost seems to be driven by state mandate. You talk about classroom size, and you talk about classroom accoutrement. It's all related to the costs you're talking about now. Frankly, I think you'd do a better job selling this piecemeal and coming back and setting your priorities. I don't see any priorities on this list. Everything's given the same weight. And I would like to know what's the most important thing on your list. I think Mike has pointed out that there is no financial plan here. And I'm not comfortable voting on something where the planning financially hasn't been done. Of course, you have to make some assumptions, but assumptions are reasonable and people are reasonable usually. And if they understand reasonable assumptions, they're gonna understand where the school board is coming from. And right now, I don't get that resonance with the school board. I really think the schools are important. They're the most important asset we have in our communities. But it's a big ask and it's not a proven ask. I think you need to piecemeal it, set your priorities. You're gonna build a new high school down the road 20-25 years from now anyway. In terms of the high school, I'm not ignoring the other schools as well. We've got 5 towns and a fair number of schools involved here. But you do need to prioritize and figure out, go back to Mike's comment about cash flow. The banks are gonna ask for this from you anyway. The bond bank is gonna wanna know how you're spending the money, how you're allocating the funds. And most importantly, they wanna know who's your project manager. And I don't know who your project manager is or whether they're qualified to be a project manager. But you need to have someone involved who understands large amounts of money and the banking and financial part of it, as well as the structural and engineering part of it. And I'm not getting that that's been organized.
Right? Yeah, that's, you make a very good point there. I mean, when you're spending this much money, usually you have a consultant come on board to evaluate the work that's been done and issue a warrant for payment. Are you going to have a staff of probably professional engineers who are going to sign off on the work that's done and initiate the warranties and do all of the administrative things that a major construction contract? I mean, there's going to be probably a half a dozen or more major construction contracts involved here. That's a huge burden. I'm just going to take the contractor's signature. Here's your invoice. We're done. How is that? Is that the part of the $3 million for the architect?
So I think your question is a very valid one. And if you, going back to the slide, if you would please, to the 3rd slide, please, from the beginning. We have brought in a number of professionals, and those last, the 3rd from the bottom and 2nd from the bottom have been the primary experts. And we will have similar type organizations that will be shepherding us through this project when that happens. But we obviously can't create a relationship with an organization until we have the money set to do so. Because they expect payment for their services and.
Understood. Well, energy efficiency investments, that's a contractor. That's not a consultant who's going to be doing the paperwork. Harriman Associates, what is their?
They actually are a consultant. That's
They're a
exactly what
consulting
they,
engineer?
no, energy efficiency investments are exactly a consultant made up of engineers and a number of other.
Okay, who's going to represent RSU 40 as accepting the work as finished, complete, and proper?
That will obviously, as we get ready to execute these things, there will be relationships built and contracts signed with organizations that specialize in those services.
I'm gonna
I'll
just chime in
vote
for that real
it-
quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Michael, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody for attending this. This is very, very important. My name is Matthew Spino. I'm a board member from Union. I voted yes for this $81 million bond. I was part of the board that helped build MCST, $25 million project. And when we were discussing this in our meetings for RSU 40, one thing that I did bring up was that we need a project manager. The only reason the MCST was as successful as it was, we had extra money to buy complete photovoltaic and all that stuff, solar for the roof, is because we had a project manager that we hired that had specific skill set. We went through reference checking, all these different things. We had several people, but this one person really shone. And what they did, they worked with Beth Fisher, they worked with the board, they worked with our architects and so forth, where he was able to shave off, good amounts of money to make sure that the job was there. And also was holding accountable subcontractors and so forth from the architects. So we had that. And one of the things I specifically said in the board meeting was we need to have project management. So when and if and when this goes through, that's going to be one of the minutiae that we're going to have to go through and say, who are we going to hire? What are the details we need to have? So that's going to be part of it. Can't tell you now who that be.
Is that gonna be budgeted in this, or is it gonna be
It's-
budgeted from the
Operating budget.
When we
operating
had
budget?
that MCST, when we had that bond, we budgeted it. It's all part of that process. Because if we didn't do it, that would be very irresponsible for the board to say, let's just go willy-nilly. But that was one of our highest priorities. Once we had that bond, all the towns for MCST that fed into it voted yes. Our highest priority was to make sure we had someone with competence who could really drive that process to make sure that money was being spent, work was being done, and so forth. So until that money was there, we couldn't really figure out who would that be, get through that process. But my view is there will be a competent project manager. As a
Okay,
board member,
there will be.
I expect that.
So the
as a board
question
member.
is it in this pot of money, or is it gonna come out of the operating budget?
It's out of the bond. That's how we did it at MCSD.
Do you have
Operating
a,
budget,
do you have a
operating
consultant in mind?
Huh?
Do you have a consultant or individual in mind?
Personally,
No, but,
I mean, that's the cart before the horse.
well, no,
It's gotta go to-
maybe
it's gotta
that
be an RFP.
particular question, the card is before the horse.
It's gotta be an RFP though.
I haven't got any confidence that at this point, the work is gonna be done properly. I mean, just pouring concrete, you gotta do a slump test. Do you have
Yeah.
somebody on staff that's gonna do the slump test? No, somebody's gotta do it. Is it gonna be the contractor, or are you gonna have a consultant do it?
It's a tough.
Or is it gonna be
Yeah,
staff, or is
I
it gonna be
understand your
staff?
concerns about it completely, like, we had to drill, wells for the geothermal, stuff like that. And when we had electrical cowboy come in and really cost, taxpayers a lot of money because they were shoddy. All these different things you gotta make sure, and as part of the project, that will come as the process, and this is just the first, hey, this is what we wanna do for the towns. And I understand it's a lot of cash. I'm a taxpayer too. I hope I answered your question, if you wanna talk more, we can.
Well, no, I'm glad we agree on the necessity that it be done.
Yes.
And it
Thank
just-
you, Michael.
Yes.
John, do you have any more questions?
Yeah.
John,
He'll get there.
I'll get you.
He's getting there.
you all set? Bob?
Right
You all
now.
set?
Well, I think the response to the project manager issue has been adequately addressed. I think that's important. I mean, that is key. The question is chicken and the egg. And, you hope to trust your school board enough to do it right. And it really boils down to that. So,
So can I say on that
No,
note,
this second.
that when we decided to do this bond, and like he said, the project manager, that was our priority. Because I'm not qualified to see if they're doing the right job, and more than some of these other board members. And he's one person, he can't do all these schools plus the project manager. That was part of the thing, somebody right on board, right up front. Know what we want to do, how we want to do it, and make sure it's getting done right. So that would definitely be. That would definitely be.
yeah, it would be nice if the warrant article addressed that in some general way. So that the board is obligated. And takes on that responsibility.
I think we just assumed that we would automatically do it, and we didn't,
So I think that's part of the problem, and maybe the board doesn't hear this enough, the school board doesn't hear this enough, but. I mean, I personally take a lot of heat for how we craft warrant articles. That could get you run out of town real quick. But. And I appreciate the fact that you have the attorney crafting the legal requirements for your warrant article. But hopefully you have the same rules we do where you can give an explanation. We can have a warrant article and we can give an explanation. And I'm assuming that our rules can't be that different from yours, but one of the biggest complaints we get on voting day when we send out absentee ballots is the lack of information. And I know you guys send out something, but there's a lack of information and people genuinely feel there's a lack of transparency at the school board level. And I don't think that's anybody's fault. I think it's the nature of the beast. But I think if you're going to go and do this ask, you have to go, not what's just legally, what's legally required, but what's required as the public would want you to present, not what legally you have to do. It's about what you would want to see if you had to vote on this. And that's a big ask when you're dealing with state law and bureaucracy and everything. And I implore you to really educate the public. And when you're crafting that article, put as much information as you can in there, because transparency is a huge issue. And I know that's hard to hear. It's hard to hear for this board when people say, oh, you're not being transparent. It's hard for me to hear. I just lived through AD Gray. So I think you guys really have to just don't meet the legal requirement, really give an explanation, give more information than what you want to give. Because we're going to get the calls. I'm going to forward them to you, but we're going to get the phone calls about this. My office staff and myself are going to be the ones. I've heard more about this in the last 2 weeks than I have about any other subject in town. So, and they don't, and why they don't, but typically people do not want to go to the school board meetings, and they just don't want to call and talk to you guys. And I don't know why. I will have all of your numbers for everybody to give out for all the board members from all the boroughs so that you guys can chat with people. But, people get mad. People have questions. They're not going to call Sandy. They're going to call Abden. They're going to call Bob. They're going to call John. They're going to call Will, and they're going to call Mike, and they're going to call me. And is that the right way to go about it? Probably not. But the best thing you can do is educate the residents, educate us, because, and I'm going to gladly give over everybody's phone number, but you have to understand there's a transparency issue. It's not easy to understand. It's a hard concept to accept, but you've got to deal with that too if you want to get traction on this. There is a significant transparency issue.
And frankly, that's one of the reasons why we're coming to the towns to talk to you all, and why we want people to come.
Right. And
to
that's
visit our
good.
schools and do tours of the schools. And
Yeah.
where they can
But
see. what
you're
we're
not
talking
giving them a real big window to do that, because we're starting now in August, and that gives them September and October. And people are just coming from summer, and it's tough. And like I said, we discuss this all the time. We're talking about the Hofs's house. Should we have a special election? Should we not have a special town warrant? I mean, so I'm just 2 cents, and I'm trying to be as open and honest with all of you as I can, just so you know where we're coming from. And it's probably not even the board coming from this. It's me just trying to say, because we're going to be the ones that get the questions. As much as I wish it was you guys. Steve knows this. I'll call Steve up sometimes and say, hey, do you know this? And
Yeah. I mean, obviously, threading that needle is a hard one.
it's a hard
And
one.
you deal with it all the time.
Mhm.
And I can tell you that the board spoke about this in some length when they voted to put it on the November ballot. And so, yeah, no question. I mean, it is a short timeline. Unfortunately, the other problem is that the further it goes out, the more expensive that it becomes. And so we're trying to keep it current, where we're keeping it so the numbers that we don't come back later on and say, hey, sorry,
Whoops,
those
yep.
numbers. Whoops is right. Yeah. So this is what we're trying to do, and why we're.
I'd increase that contingency then. I wouldn't go with 5%.
I
I understand your professionals are telling you that, but
okay,
we're not seeing that in the
I will,
real world.
sure.
I would say that in furtherance of what Julie just said, if you put this and in a single page ad in the Lincoln County News and listed what you need done and gave a smorgasbord approach, so the voters could pick and choose which projects they wanted. I'm sure they would not turn down boilers. And they might be very angry about unfunded mandates, but they'd probably fund those despite their anger at the state and the federal government. But if you put this to the voters, they will vote for a new roof. They'll vote for a new sprinkler system. But just saying here's $81 million, that I just can't imagine the level of trust you're asking from the voters.
So one of the things that when we were going through this process, EEI, energy efficiency initiatives that have shepherded several school districts through similar renovations. I'm from talking to several districts that have done this, I am following basically the same, or I have recommended, and we are kind of following the same steps that other school districts have done.
Waldeboro is different. Let me just tell you right off the bat.
I understand. I get it. And yeah, I'm sure that potentially we're gonna make some mistakes along the way. That's not our intent. That's why
No,
we're
it
coming
never-
out here to talk to everybody and to put ourselves out there and to answer the questions to the best we can.
And just so everybody, I think everybody agrees, everybody's doing the best they can. It's just a matter of how you get through it and the cost of it all.
Sure.
And we appreciate your feedback. I mean, we have a facilities committee every month. Talk about facility needs in the district every month, but nobody outside of the facilities. Ever comes to that.
Well, if you ever want me, I'll be more than happy to come and
When
share.
Thursday. And when we hold the board meetings, so no, very few people outside of our, it's on the board side, and so as much as we want to get the information out there. People don't come, they say they don't even call us.
I'm glad just to see this many seats filled. I changed the whole room.
When we're done with this, everyone will leave. We'll have to-
No, it's gonna stay.
You all set, Will?
Yeah.
All right. Is there any public questions that would like to be asked? Go ahead. You can just stand up and say your name.
Sure. I'm Susan Swed. And did you say that your referendum language is due at the end of this month?
I need to get the ballots to the town so they can send them out to the printer.
By the end of August?
Correct.
Wow. We're just caring about this. My other question was, as an aside, you mentioned federal and state money that you got for COVID. And it seemed like a lot of the things that you use it for are on this list that you have up there. How much did you get in federal and state COVID?
I can't speak to how much we had the
Where did
project.
I find out?
It's on our website. I believe it's still up there, although I'm not sure if it is, but, 50 different. I want to say. $6 million.
And is it all gone?
Well, we had requirements by the federal government on ways in which to spend it. Some of it could not go to facilities related, some of it had to be for student loss, which is more like getting tutors, fiction tutors, those sorts of things, the big bulk of that. Literally amount of time it students at school.
So is this organized in a way that it's only available to taxpayers?
Like one organized.
Well, it just seems like you have a school budget, and this was extra money that they want. And who got to decide where to spend it? I guess I'd like to see that.
We had to submit applications to the agencies, and then they would prove back rather than third.
I had a blind guy, man put blinds in my house, and he told me his industry was booming because the schools were all putting new blinds up. And I was a little bit taken aback by that. Because I would have thought would have gone for teachers and tutors and things like that instead of blinds in the school. But this is just somebody's anecdotal.
I can tell you, we did not spend any money on, or very little money on blinds, and we bought them from Walmart, and my maintenance crew installed them. So,
Okay,
yeah,
Good to
yeah,
see.
absolutely.
thank you.
Sure.
I've asked for 4 years for blinds, and it's turning me down, so.
All right, Steve, I'm gonna have got people coming up to the lectern, so,
Oh,
because I
sure.
guess.
So I ask you, do you want me to ask my questions now or wait till citizens' comments?
Yeah, people can't, if everybody who has a comment can just go up to the mic because people at home can't hear people.
Correct, yeah. If you citizens comments, are you,
Yeah, or
Part of
I could
this.
do it. I mean, it's all about this, so.
It would be.
if you got questions.
Yeah, so,
So if the school board and stuff is done, then they can leave if they would.
yeah, so, hi, I'm Steve Carp.
live in Waldeboro. You know, when I was campaigning for school board, a lot of issues came up as I was knocking on hundreds of doors, and you know, there was questions about curriculum, questions about the books. The number one question though that came up that I got was, what do you think about this bond? That was the number one question. And they were very concerned about it. They were very concerned that we could even afford it. And I said, I had some questions too, and some concerns too. So we moved to Waldeboro here almost 7 years ago. We fell in love with Maine, fell in love with Waldeboro, and we have noticed some things. And I just did a little research here about poverty levels in the 5 towns. Warren has, this is according to city-data.com. Okay, city-data.com. You can check up on me. So, you know, Warren 6.4% below poverty level. Washington 12.9%. Union 9.2%. Friendship 10.5% below the poverty level. You know what it is for Waldeboro? 26.2%. The question is, can we afford this? That's the big question right now. And I thank you for one of the questions that I had sent an email to Karen here earlier was, but you answered it, Brian. I really appreciate that. You were guessing about $400 per 100,000. And I was doing the math in my head and was going, more sticker shock. The timing of this bond couldn't have come worse. Our property taxes came up almost 30%. And from talking to other people in Waldeboro, that's what it was. And I know we need police officers. We got to have, you know, I mean, we need a lot of stuff. But then coming on top of this, people were very concerned. And most people know that debt, bond is just another nice name for debt. Okay. So the questions that I have are, I guess one is, can we afford it? And all these questions, by the way, as you point out, Mike, banks are going to be asking this. They're going to be, you know, if you have a loan, if you're a businessman, you have for your business and you go and apply for a loan, well, they're going to ask you a gazillion questions. So we need to have these answers. I like what Bob and Mike was saying is that, you know, prioritize this. And can, you know, last time I spoke here, I think my suggestion was take those 7 items on the community agency services that we support and break them up by lineup so we can vote on each one on a particular merit. So why can't we do that on this? You know, why can't we do this, have priorities? And I know maybe I'm asking a lot of the voters here because, you know, the warrants, you know, we're tired of reading through umpteen zillion warrants, but this is important here. And like John was saying here, you know, some of the stuff we can agree on, some of it we were like, okay, let's put this off. Okay. We bought a project house. We knew it was a project house. We'd love to have gone out and got a $250,000 home equity loan and got it taken care of right off the bat. But we just taking one project, prioritize it and take one project at a time. So these are the difficult questions, the ethical questions, and I don't like talking about this. It's very uncomfortable. It's painful for me to talk about this, but maybe a bank would too, because banks want to know, well, you know, if you've got employees leaving your business, why should we invest in they want to see the product. I know it's an impersonal way of looking at it. They want to see the product. Okay. So these questions are, do we want to invest in a school district governed by a school board that passed a policy this past school year that allows students to keep secrets from parents in full cooperation for the school administration?
Don't worry about, that's not part of we're talking about the school, not
Well,
the curriculum and stuff like that. We're talking about the bond.
okay. I guess I won't ask other questions then.
I also just want to point out that I know, Bob, you're used to the business end of the loans. It's a little bit different when it comes to schools. It's the town's credit Each individual town will be responsible for the credit. That's what gets the rate for the school. So it affects our rating, our bond rating too, as a town when our schools go out and bond. But they're probably, those questions aren't going to come up about how are you going to afford it? It's built in. We afford it by taxation. So the bond process is not as stringent. They're not going to ask questions that, because it's guaranteed money. We're going to set a mill rate and it's guaranteed money and they're going to do the loan. That's because it's our full faith and credit as each individual municipality. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. It's not exactly the school going out and borrowing, it's each town's full faith and credit. And how that happens is because we have the ability to tax. And that's voted on by the voters.
Sandy?
So being on the board and being part of this district, I have two priorities. Safety. We have to offer these kids safety, and the buildings do not show it. We have buildings, we have the horticulture that's away from the building, they have to walk through the parking lot. And the more stories I hear, my priority is safety. So if we're gonna prioritize these safety issues with the buildings, the conditions, I mean, that's where my priority is. Because we have to protect these kids.
Emily had her hand up before.
Emily, I'll take Emily next.
You had your hand up before?
A long time ago,
Oh.
sort of, we've gone by that topic. So bear with me if I step back a little bit. I have one priority, and that's the kids in our district. In terms of management of our, not the management of our schools, the condition of our schools, I can give you one priority, and that's the septic system. It's failing.
Mhm.
That kind of prioritizing will be done when the project begins. I don't have a concern about these priorities. Let me say that we all have different priorities. So my friend Matt over there, he's going to prioritize sports and football fields, and you go, Matt. You do a fantastic job. Me, I'm going to prioritize the band, the chorus, the seats, so that people can hear a drama production well. It's not muffled, but everything, you know. But we don't get to choose our own priorities. We have, step back. We have 3 management people here who are amazing. How many of you remember the years of Dave Gall? When we were really well run, right? And then we had a stretch, but things didn't go so well. This management team has brought us back financially. Other words, give me some other words. Brian Race has done a tremendous job going through every single school, determining what needs to be done, what's bad. Our financial manager has just informed us with so much detail. Every time we go to a meeting, she switches it around another way so we can understand it. And we have Steve. Sorry, Steve, I'm gonna embarrass you. We have, and let me tell you that the makeup of a school board and a superintendent is quite simple. We hire one person to speak for us. Individual school members do not speak. We have a superintendent, and that's his job. And we tell him what we want him to do and say. But we don't speak. Yes, if we have a conversation with a community member, fine, that's all okay. But it's not our personal opinion, it's the opinion of the entire board. We come to consensus, we make decisions. I'm a Waldoboro representative. I'm voted for in Waldoboro. Once I'm on that board, I represent all 5 towns. I don't single out Waldoboro and how I make my decisions. If Miller School needs more than Warren, or if Warren needs more than Miller School, I got to vote for Warren because that's the highest priority. So there's a certain structure that I think people don't always understand. So I'm voting for the seats and the carpet in. I'm voting for new band instruments. I'm voting for another
music teacher, that's my personal preference. But as a school board member, I don't get to make that choice. I do what Brian says is necessary. What's second after the septic system?
Probably the domestic hot water system.
Domestic hot water system. How about safety? I just went to a 4-day conference in Augusta about safety in schools. The FBI was there, the Secret Service was there. It was an incredible conference. We have so much to do for safety, and we think we're safe here in Maine, folks. We are not. We haven't had a school shooting yet. It's coming. This crazy world we live in, it's coming. Let's get the safety things done before it comes. All right, I've said enough. Sorry.
Sorry, with the hand up.
That was that lady right there behind Susan.
You want to come up?
I'd like Jeanette to speak. They brutally.
That's okay because Danny answered the question, but I just wanted to add.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm Jeanette Wheeler from Waldeboro School Board member. Danny answered the question, but when I wanted to participate in the discussion, all I wanted to say was when we voted, the school board members voted, no, not all of us did vote. That was your question. How many of us voted? How many of us didn't? Danny answered that. But I wanted to make the point that some of us did not vote. Back in June, we were going to actually have this vote. And the way I saw it, the public needed to have more information. So the majority of the people on the school board voted for this to come up in November so that we would have this discussion so that the communities could go into the school and decide for themselves whether or not they wanted to spend $80 million on a bond. That was all I had to say. I didn't get the opportunity to say it. Thank you.
Anybody else in the audience?
I want to say thank you for having us this evening and giving us a chance to share with you what our proposal includes. I appreciate your feedback. I have been at this for 10 years now, and coming to this meeting, I'm realizing that this project probably should have been presented a decade ago at a fraction of the current cost. The reality is we are not able to keep up with the condition of our schools. We have systems failing. What we've gotten good at is finding money to fix something when it breaks, but that always comes at the expense of something else not getting done. What we're trying to do with this project is catch up and get back on track so that we do have safe schools for our students and staff, and that we do have modern learning environments for our students, both as something good for our community, but also a means to help attract and retain staff, because as you mentioned, it is important to staff to be able to work in a facility that supports their work. We haven't talked at all about staffing. I could talk at length about that. I know that everyone is struggling to find employees. I can tell you that if we could fill all of our positions this year, we would fill 87 vacancies, which is at least 20% of our workforce. And that's not new or different for us. It might be a little bit of an improvement over what we've experienced during COVID, but we have a tremendous amount of staff coming and going on an annual basis. And I have talked with enough people to know that our challenges include both our ability to compensate our staff competitively, but also to provide an environment for them where they feel good about coming to work every day. I so appreciate the work that our staff does every day, knowing the challenges that we face as an organization. And I just hope that you'll take Brian up on his invitation to come and see the condition of our schools. And we're happy to answer any of your follow-up questions if you have them. So please feel free, follow up with us. And Julie, as people come to you, please don't hesitate to refer them.
Oh, I will.
to us.
I definitely
Thank
will.
you, everyone.
Step right up.
Hi, I'm Karen Wellman. I'd like to know, all in all, what our tax is gonna go up to.
Well, because there's so many unknowns. I think that Brian said it would be $400 per $100,000 worth of assessment.
That's just on the school, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm talking about our local taxes.
Well, we went up this year
16 mil.
15.6.
15.6.
We went up 1.5, 1.6.
So all in all, the percentage is gonna be,
That doesn't include this bond.
yeah, I know.
And just to be clear, this bond will not hit in this tax year. It'll
No,
probably be
right.
2, if not 3 years out before.
So the 400 won't be coming out this year.
No,
Absolutely not.
no.
It'll take 10 years to do the 400.
Well, the full amount he said would be, I think,
Approximately 2030, I believe.
2030.
Is what I have. He was mentioning that by that point, we would have the full amount expended, and it would be hitting the full amount that's being taxed. It would be a lesser amount leading up to that as we spend portions of that $81 million.
But you're giving the authorization for the 81 million.
But you're also saying that students pressuring to come here, I hear a lot of leaving. They go at homeschool.
Anybody else got any questions about the budget, the bond?
Just one.
Can you come up? Yeah, please. Danny?
Just wanted to mention in regards to the vote that the board took on May 4th. I will print copies off and bring them to the town office so you folks can see so there's no question of who voted for what. And who voted yes or no, and who wasn't there. So I just want to make sure that you guys have, I read what it was, but that way, if I drop it off, you will see in black and white how it was.
Anybody else got any questions about the bond? Then I guess you guys are all set.
Thank you for your time.
I don't know if he understood that.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes. What you gonna say? You're on public comment.
Oh, we're in the public comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just want to clarify that.
You want to take a 5-minute
Take a
recess?
couple minute break, 5-minute break.
Oh.
That sounds like a good idea.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'll get you the name of the guy we had come in and talk to us. It
All set? Yep. All right, back in. All right, next thing on the agenda is the Hofstas House public hearing. Somebody like to make a motion to open up the public hearing?
I'll make the motion, to open the public hearing for the Hofstas House.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? All right. Public comment.
So do you want me to give an
Go ahead.
overview?
Yes, please.
So the Hofstas House, for people that don't know, or the Hofstas Homestead, we've begun to call it, is adjacent to the Sylvania land. And based on the recommendations of the Sylvania Redevelopment Committee, they have made the recommendation that we put out an RFP for the dismantling or removal in one whole piece of the structure of the Hofstas House. As you know, we made up an RFP. There's still some concern from the committee that the December 31st deadline is too short. We did massage the language to be able to extend that. I don't know if you even want to reconsider that, extending that deadline from December 31st or letting the RFP go just as it is. But what this would allow for is, the first question would allow for the town to let that building go to be dismantled or removed. And we are going to accept bids essentially to do that. Now, the bid might be, the best option might be, somebody doesn't pay us any money and they just take the building and then we don't have to pay for demolition of it. Because the second question would provide for us to actually demolish the building if needed. If no one is interested in the building. I can tell you already, we've had 3 interested parties about dismantling / moving the building. So there is interest out there. But that's what the hearing on the Hofstas House Homestead would be about, would be the questions that will appear at our special town meeting on, help me out, because it's late and my date is September,
No,
no,
can't be.
September 12th,
or 12.
isn't it?
12, yes.
Yeah, September 12th at 6 o'clock, and it
Yep.
would be here at the town office.
Okay. Is there any comments from the public? Melvin?
I'm not gonna walk up there. If you can't hear me from here.
You're loud, Melvin.
Hear me. But it seems to me that this town can acquire property and then give it away. The A.D. Gray School. Nothing wrong with it when we acquired it. Wasn't fit for schoolhouse. They were using it up to the point where we acquired it. We give it away, land and all. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the Hofstas.
Not giving away the land, Melvin.
Not the land,
The
just
land.
the building.
Yeah, just the building, but the Sylvania property, which is attached to it, it's all one property.
No, it's two separate properties, Melvin.
Well, the time that he was alive, Sylvania had bought that land from him, but he was allowed to live there.
That's,
I know it.
that's accurate, but they are 2 separate lots.
Well, it might be 2 separate deeds.
Yes.
Yes.
I got 2 separate deeds to my property. It's all taxed as one.
But just to be clear, the only thing that the RFP would or the request for proposals would would handle would be the actual physical building of the physical building. No property with it, just the actual physical building.
Yeah, but we have done nothing with that Sylvania land yet, and it's noticeable to the naked eye.
So the redevelopment committee has come up with a plan that the DEP and the EPA like, which is constructing the field, a tennis courts, pickleball courts, basketball courts, and an open air pavilion. And also trails throughout the property. And of course, that's all going to be Max's responsibility. I love it to say that he's an excellent grant finder and finding grants for it. So we are working on it on a weekly basis, believe it or not. But I just don't want you to get the idea that there's any property with the Hofs's house. It's just the house. It would cost too much to bring it back to where it is, but there is some value in it. Again, we won't know what people are going to, what they're willing to pay for it. We don't know. So we'll have to see what comes out of that.
Mike?
If I could jump in, Melvin, most of the members of the board here, and most of the committee was, I think, is unanimous too, and certainly the board subsequent to that, wanted to sell the house on site, but we couldn't do it for two reasons. One is because DEP didn't want us to, because it's adjacent to a hazardous waste site, and secondly, because Leadvance has right of first refusal to limit development on it. And quite frankly, they don't want any development on the property with a permanent residence. We wanted to sell it, but we were told by Leadvance and DEP not to do it. The only way, and right now, we were stuck with a terrible situation where the building it's open to the rain. We've tried to put tarps on it to keep it from rotting in place. The best and only alternative we have is to sell it piecemeal and have somebody else assemble it on their own site. And I'd love to have it rebuilt. It's a historical building. I'd love to have it rebuilt here in Waldeboro and get it on the tax rolls, but they won't let us do it.
So in the Leadvance contract with the town, it couldn't be developed.
And DEP.
Well, no,
That's
for residential use.
Commercial.
It cannot be. It cannot be.
Leadvance doesn't have a contract with the town, Melvin. Leadvance is governed by a restrictive covenant on the deed. We're restricted by that covenant as well. And it tells you what you're allowed and what you're not allowed to do on that land.
Wow.
That's what's staying our hand.
Restrictive covenant on that deed.
That
It just didn't happen.
With the approval of the DEP. They couldn't have done it otherwise.
Oh, we're gonna take buildings down. I got a band down there, it's falling right down.
But another couple of minutes, she will be gone.
Fix the band. Cause I had contractor after contractor in there. Ain't worth it. Don't touch it. Nature will take care of it.
Right. Bob?
I do have I've just put it on the table, and I know Mike is probably against this idea, but it's because he and I share the concern that the longer the house sits there, potentially the less it's worth to anybody. But the comment was made during the meeting, when the development committee discussed this issue, that contractors are gonna have a heck of a lot easier time moving that thing in the winter time when the ground is solid than they will in late fall or early spring. So the suggestion is to consider moving that December 31st date to say end of February.
Is that for the removal?
Yeah.
Yes, that's for the removal.
Okay.
Of the house and the foundation. Because both of them, I think, are in there, right?
I haven't seen the warrant, so I don't know what it actually says.
I haven't seen the warrant either.
I would agree with you that the foundation should probably go to.
Well, that's not the warrant question. That's the RFP.
That's the RFP. That's the RFP.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the RFP.
the warrant question does not have a date
Doesn't
in
have
it.
a date on it.
It
Okay.
does not have a date. on it.
Good, all right. Well,
The warrant question is, shall the town authorize the sale of a two-story frame home known as the Hofs's House located at 467 Friendship Street, map U2, lot 2A, to the most advantageous bona fide offer to relocate or dismantle the structure and on such other terms and conditions that the select board deems to be in the best interest of the town. This is for the sale of the structure only. No land is included in the sale. And the article number 3 is, shall the town, in the event the Hofs's house is not sold, authorize demolition of the Hofs's house?
I do recommend we add for the sale of the house and its foundation only. I do think we need to put that clarification in there, so people are, they know.
And or.
Sorry,
Or.
but could be and or, you're right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So say that again.
For the sale of the structure and or the foundation on which it sits.
Well, you can't, because what if somebody wants the foundation and not the house?
And they like.
And
leave it
Gotta
out.
get rid of
say
that.
and-
Either way, it gets demolished.
And or.
Either way, the problem goes away. You can't get the foundation without taking the house down. Either way, the problem goes away.
So I think you're.
So they
In
want-
my opinion, this is getting way complicated.
Well, it will get complicated.
And in the RFP, I think it can be addressed in the RFP and not the,
Oh, yeah.
and not the warrant question.
Okay, as long as we're comfortable, we don't have to have authorization from the voters to get rid of the foundation.
Right, to me, it's the structure, that's part of the structure,
Okay, fair enough.
that to me,
Structure.
All right.
Any other public comments? Seeing none. Would somebody like to make a motion, to close the public hearing?
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second. All those in favor? Would somebody like to act on the public hearing?
Act on the warrant.
On the warrant, yes.
Yep, I recommend that we put the warrant forward as read.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's it. Is there any adjustments to the agenda?
There's just one. That's 10.3, and there's a proclamation that needs to be presented.
Okay. Somebody like to make a motion to approve that change? Adjustment.
I'll make the motion to approve 10.3.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. All right, down to citizens' comments. We have citizens' comments. Steve?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Abden. I just a couple things here, and it really goes back to something you said, these bigger ethical questions. You are talking about with the student population, increasing or decreasing. What I'm hearing on the street is going to be decreasing, okay? And it's because of these ethical issues. And I think, again, if you're going to a bank and you're looking for a loan, the bank is going to say, well, let me see your business. Is it successful? And I asked the question earlier, do we want to invest in this question? Another one, do we want to invest in a school district that refuse to listen to the concerns of this community about porn in the school libraries, whose sole purpose is to groom our children, and continues to stock our school libraries with even more porn? Well, I had a meeting in early March with Steve and Christina and the high school librarian, and I asked Mike to come and witness, and you were there. And again, it's like falling on deaf ears. And not only that, at the time I had counted 23 books in the library that would have received an NC-17 rating if they were a movie. Within weeks, they had ordered even more. And I don't understand this binge buying of porn. And so do we want to invest in a system like that? And the last question is, do we want to invest in a school district that, despite the denials of that school administration, does teach transgenderism to our students? And I'll bring this, since they're gone, I will bring this to their attention. The school board on September 6th meeting. It's in the Exploring Psychology textbook right there in high school. Just look it up in the index. It's right there. Had one student from Miller come home one day, and I'm trying to be vague here. I don't want to give away identities here. And this daughter asks their mom, dad, or told them, by the way, they're now teaching us sex education. You go to the RSU 40 website, look under curriculum. The only health, which is incomplete, I've been asking for that for 2 years, is 9th through the 12th grade. They have stuff, a curriculum for health, nothing in the 5th grade. Another elementary school student from Miller comes home and says, again, I'm trying to be vague here. Hey, mom, dad, I thought I was a boy, girl. What gender am I? And this is what they're being taught at school. And speaking of decreasing student population, I know that there are at least 5 students that were pulled out and are going to a local private school. In 5 students in the second grade, they were pulled out because their teacher was telling them to question their gender identity. They were being taught transgenderism in the second grade. So even Steve Nolan several weeks ago had mentioned there's a record number of students in this district that are now being homeschooled. Why is that? And so I think it's a good question. I would encourage all of you to come to the school board meetings and see for yourself and ask questions. You guys asked some great questions, by the way. So we just keep it up. So thank you, Abden. Appreciate it.
Any other citizens' comments? You two can fight over it. Who can get there faster?
Don't even do that.
We're both like really.
I just had cane lessons today, so I'm new at it.
I'm Jan Minzy. Resident. I also work for the school system. But what I wanted to say was that one of our local citizens, Edith Berger, is in the final stages of Teacher of the Year for the state of Maine. She is one of 4. She was one of 8 until the other day. And just recently, it was announced that she is one of 4 teachers. And you'll see a lot of press and Facebook information. I read all of the candidates. It was really uplifting to read those and to see the things that are going on in our town, in our state. And I know Edie is, she represents the entire district and it's just really, I was really proud. To me, when I got that news, I felt the same as the Little League group that went down to play in the Nationals. I felt exactly the same way, like they're there for us. They're our folks. And anyway, I just thought we can all be proud of that. And she's a teacher, 6th grade writing and social studies at Miller.
Don't want to run over.
Oh, wait, I don't want to collide.
Susan Price, and I live here in Waldeboro. I also teach 1st grade at Miller School, and I just want to address the declining student population and just say, as far as I know, I have 2 more students than last year, and the other 2, I teach 1st grade, and the other 2 1st grade teachers each have 3 more students than last year. So I'm not sure if it's really declining. That again is only 1st grade, but that's just what I want to say.
Melvin?
Here we keep hearing that our school system is not good. But we're about to have the state teacher of the year. I can almost guarantee that Edith Berger will be the nominee for that. I'm not 100% sure, but if our school systems are failing so bad, why do Waldeboro, Maine have the teacher of the year?
She's got 25% chance, Melvin. Anybody else got any comments, public comments? Seeing none, we'll move along. What more comments? Bob?
I'll put them in at the end of the meeting when we talk about the next agenda.
Okay. John? You're good?
Happy to be here, proud to serve.
Mike?
Yeah, after talking about $81 million, I don't really want to talk about nickels, but I'm going to talk about nickels anyway. The town sign is your foot's.
We have it ordered. We have
Okay.
yeah, we waited for the new budget cycle.
Okay, so it's going to be fixed. All right.
Yes, it is.
Part 2 of the nickels, and this is where the real nickel is. I'm also a member of the utility district. And the utility district just signed up Constellation New Energy to buy electricity for the supply portion of the bill for 11.24 cents per kilowatt hour. Then, Central Maine Power Standard offer is 16.6 in their most recent rate filing. Can we get the one facility that the solar farm doesn't get electricity from, which is the water system? Can we competitively purchase electricity?
I believe so. Yes, we could.
Okay. Can I get a motion to that effect?
Does this board govern the water? Okay, yeah, well, I'd make that motion.
The water,
My only
talk to the water
concern,
district.
yeah, my only concern is that, are they gonna deliver now? Or are they gonna deliver 3 years down the road? Because
You
some
can
of
get a
these-
2 or 4 year, whatever term you want.
Okay, but the electricity is available now.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes,
great.
and if you go to the website, the competitive electricity website that the state puts out, there's a bewildering number of people who offer wholesale electricity, well, it's not wholesale electricity, it's an alternative to Central Maine Power Standard offer.
And we're not preempting the water committee.
No,
No,
Okay,
the
then I
committee
think,
can't
I
vote
make
on
the
anything.
motion that we shop around for better rates for the water district,
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Will?
I just want to thank the school for coming, explaining some of that, no doubt there's a lot there, and I have a daughter in Miller, so I've been inside the school, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, but I like how we addressed that there should be a priority list.
Yep, absolutely.
It's just sticker shock, it's a lot of money, and it's hard times for everybody, but I really appreciate them coming.
Yeah, I see a couple things on there that was kind of outrageous, is $100,000 to upgrade a walking path.
Yeah.
That $100,000 could be spent somewhere else on like part of the boiler.
Yeah.
I just, some of the stuff in there is just ridiculous, and they really need to prioritize. And I think they could get it passed if they prioritized it and actually gave people a list of what they're gonna fix first, instead of just throwing a.
Right, as I said,
Yep.
if they put a new boiler for the high school, it would pass. in a
Absolutely,
heartbeat. It would
absolutely.
pass in a heartbeat.
You're just asking too much of the taxpayers. It'll probably pass. But I won't be one voting for that without a priority list. They should have done it that way. And that's the way you get stuff passed.
well, they still could. It depends what the warrants, what their article says. Maybe they heard us.
Yep,
I mean,
hope so.
I thought I was really clear.
Yep, I hope so. We've worked, I've been on here, this is my 9th year. And we found ways that we could appease the taxpayers to get things done. And I think they need to start realizing that as a school.
Just explain it.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Town managers report.
I just want to say a big thank you to our amazing Public Works Department. They are 2 or 3 deep in culverts on North Noblesboro Road in preparation for paving it next year, and it's going swimmingly well. And the ultimate compliment was given today by John Daigle, who stopped in my office to tell me what a great job Will and the crew were doing today
While he's on vacation.
while he's on vacation, and what a nice thing it was that he doesn't have to worry that he's on vacation. So I thought that was high praise coming from.
Should the state DOT take lessons?
The state DOT is out there with their automatic lights, so I just
Set-
let everybody
set
know
off,
that's
Will.
what we're doing. And that's all I have. That's not all I have. On September 8th, down at the Worcester parking lot, the Fintown Road and Watts Hall Band will be starting to play from 5, hopefully till around 10 at night. So bring your chair down, sit down. We're going to close off the parking, at least a portion of the parking lot, and enjoy some music. Thanks to the 250th anniversary committee.
Cool. Awesome. All right, we'll move on. Consent calendar. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve?
I'd move approval, but I'd like to suggest an addition to the minutes for the
Okay.
August 8th meeting.
So you make a
And I will-
motion?
I'll make a motion subject to,
Yeah, I'll have it seconded, then I can,
okay,
in discussion. Would somebody like to second it?
A second.
All right,
so.
all those in discussion?
Suggested correction or addition actually, and I'm gonna read slowly so it can be picked up. Sure. Where we're talking about the First National Bank's wealth management presentation that Matt Weaver gave. I would add, Weaver agreed that a 60-40. Sorry. That a 60-40 equities to bond ratio is advisable. And suggested now is a good time to review the town's investment policy.
Okay.
I think that's accurate.
That's the change.
Got it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor with the change to the minutes? So, okay. Yep. We are good. All right, 10.1. Employee safety manual update. Peg is not here.
Peg is on vacation,
Okay.
but I think
So
it was all circulated. There were some changes that Bob made. We've made those. Some edits. So it's important that we adopt this tonight because that qualifies us for some savings.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's been reviewed by all the department heads and off we go to the races.
I got a question.
Yes,
Safety committee,
yes.
is that, have you got your designated safety committee folks?
It's our department heads.
Department heads, and they meet,
We are trying to meet quarterly. Well, we have been meeting quarterly and we can meet anytime there's an incident. We are going to meet to review.
but you're required to, based on the policy quarterly.
Yes.
Well, it's not to have to be part of the policy, but as a select board member, I don't think I've ever seen a safety report come out of that committee. And I'm wondering if they could be added to the
We can,
consent calendar if and when they
we can.
become.
That's not a
available.
problem because we've never really done this.
No.
We've had one. I'm not saying we followed it at times, but now there's an incentive to do that.
Somebody like to make a motion to adopt the employee safety manual.
I'd make that motion to adopt the employee safety manual that was updated on August 16th, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay. Maximilian, you are front and center on the TIF.
Yes.
Don't say a million, I've heard a million too much.
It was such a crowd ago. 10 minutes ago.
3 laps after this.
I know you're a crowd guy, but
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll try to be quick about this. We have just accepted, the state has accepted our amendments for our tax increment financing district. I would like the select board to consider maybe having add another amendment for November and possibly establishing a downtown TIF as well. I don't know if there's enough time to try and get that on the warrant article. I don't know if you needed me to say what the warrant article question would be tonight, or if it's fine if I just get it to Pam on.
What did Pam say when you talked to her?
Well, the public hearing requirement that we've always kept talking about, that wouldn't really apply to this one. This is something that I would be able to hold a public hearing on in September, which I've been able to do in the past.
Okay.
For the amendments to the current TIP program, it's going to put the Sylvania site back in there so that it can be used for some of the potential projects that will happen with the Sylvania Development Committee and and then it's going to allow 2 potential projects. One is to improve water quality and sewer treatment as well. So improvements can be made to the water district as well as the sewer district, since it's not in the TIF district, but it can support and help those in the district. And then the second one is a new state project item, which is going towards municipal facility upgrades. So I talked last time about the HVAC or heat pumps for this. The TIF would be able to help pay for that because lowering our maintenance costs means it's lowering the general tax bill in town. So those are the amendments. That's not really the high priority I have right now. I could simply wait until June if it's being a bit rushed right now. The downtown TIF is something that I don't know if it would be fine to try and get that done now. What that is a very unique type of TIF district where it's only limited to the area that is outlined in a downtown master plan, which the town did back in 2011. And it would only fund the projects that are in the downtown master plan as well. So any streetscape projects, any capital improvements that are outlined in that plan, those would be the only projects in that master plan. Now we can update the master plan as well, which means we can add some more updated projects 10 years after it was done to say, these are some other problems we need to do in the in the downtown. And the TIF can then help pay for that as well. I figured with things going up, might be good to have that start capturing that value sooner rather than later, but I can also wait until June if you feel that, if the focus is going to be the school bond question, I can wait until maybe June for those two. Or maybe to update the master plan for the downtown first, and then we'd have the TIF.
Can you do that before June?
Updating the master plan? Might take a little bit, but I
Well,
can
I'm just
try.
curious if we did everything all in June, you could do the master plan and all these other amendments
I could try
at
that.
the same
But
time.
would we lose any potential money if we wait?
We would lose any captured value that would happen next fiscal year.
So you may want to do it in November to capture
Right.
what our value is April 1st.
Right.
If you don't mind adding the two questions. To the November.
Yeah, and I can have more fully developed plan put together. I kind of rushed to just show you what the maps would look like for the two TIF districts if they're amended.
Anybody got any thoughts?
I do remember back, believe it or not, 12 years ago, we brought in a consulting firm to do the downtown master plan. And they talked about those park areas, redoing some of the signage or uniformizing the signage on the street, broadening the sidewalks. There was other stuff, the rationalizing the parking. It all made a lot of sense, and not much has changed down there since then. So and as you point out, we can modify it going forward once we have it in the TIF. And it makes sense to me. A lot of other towns have done this. Thomaston did it.
Well, and this was something I talked with Bob just before the meeting. Something I have to confirm is when I look back in the records, the downtown master plan was approved by the select board, but it never went to the town as a whole for a vote. So I don't know if that means that we're ineligible if it has to go to a town meeting for a vote. So if not, if the select board can just adopt a master plan from 10 years ago, then I'll try and get a downtown TIF ready for this November. But if I get a call and say, no, you have to have the town as a whole vote to approve that downtown master plan, then I won't really have anything for the November warrant.
I think it's more accurate, Max, to say that the select board at the time, and I wasn't on it, but accepted the master plan
Right.
because they had to pay the invoice.
Right.
I don't know whether the town has to approve it or not.
But I have to see,
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
So just approve the amendments right now, it'll be on the ballot and the master plan in June,
well, yeah,
potentially.
potentially, actually. The amendments to the first TIF, that can wait until June. That's not really a high priority item unless something changes all of a sudden. I mean, the only change is just really putting Sylvania back on there. That's not going to have its value increase.
So you want one in November and the rest in June?
If the downtown master plan is acceptable to the state, then I would like to try and have the downtown TIF ready for the November warrant.
That makes sense.
You don't want to not capture some of that funding.
So somebody like to make a motion on that?
I guess I'd move that the November warrant include the Sylvania article and the downtown master plan article. Subject, and the latter being subject to Max's confirming that select board acceptance of that plan back in 2011 qualifies it to be in the TIF. Is that
Correct, Max?
that cover you?
Yes, that would cover it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
I'll be available afterwards if anyone has questions.
All right, we'll move along to 10.3. Proclamation.
I guess I'll read it.
Yes.
This was, I'll stand up for it. This was handed to me, prior to the meeting. This is a proclamation from the governor from the state of Maine. Be it known to all the members of the Senate, House of Representatives, join in recognizing the town of Waldeboro, which is celebrating its 250th anniversary. Waldeboro was incorporated as a town in 1773 after about 30 years of settlement as a village named Broad Bay. The town's early industry and shipbuilding, which once ranked Waldeboro as the sixth port in the United States, continued until steamships displaced sail in the early 1900s. We extend our congratulations and best wishes, and it be ordered that the official expression of sentiment be sent forth on behalf of the 131st Legislature and the people of the state of Maine. Troy Jackson, President of the Senate. Rachel Talbot Ross, Speaker of the House. Derek Grant, Secretary of the Senate. Robert Hunt, Clerk of the House, sponsored by Senator Rennie of Lincoln County and the Honorable Representative Simmons of Waldeboro. So I'd like to get this to the town to properly display for our proclamation for the 250th.
Cool. Do we have to vote on that to accept it?
No,
Okay, I'm just double checking. All right. There's no old business. And any items for the agenda for the next meeting? Anybody got any yet?
I've got a few. I mean, we're gonna have the special town meeting on the 12th, right?
yes,
So it'll be
The meeting.
a busy meeting.
it could be, depending how many people show up.
If it's gonna be busy, then I won't put the other stuff out.
Well,
there, but
just
I'll
put it on,
put
that
it
way
out
we
there
know what
and
it
put
is.
down. That's great. Be nice to know where we are with LCI on their study, if there's any update on that. And how we're going with 80 Gray and Theater of America. And of course, my usual meeting the auditors. Nice to get them in here.
No problem.
Yeah.
If we don't get them next month, we'll get them.
No, they shouldn't have an issue with that.
Nobody else got anything for the agenda? The next meeting?
I'm going to have McCog, we're gonna have to approve Max's contract.
Do we want him?
We do.
Okay, I'll just check in. Does somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Nobody wants to adjourn?
I'll second.
All those in favor?